So at this stage, you're pretty much done with your textures and everything. Now the only thing that's left is to add like some believability to the textures by adding some dirt and dust and whatever. So like I mentioned earlier, we're just going to do this in between effects and materials. I'm going to create a folder and let's call this environmental wear. Now this should be like pretty self-explanatory. Let's just do some blood. This one that I usually like to add to everything because it just adds a like nice little touch. Of course, depending on the type of game or asset, you do want to do this or not. If you're making like a racing game, it's might not be the best idea, but for example, if you're working on an adventure game, a fighter game, it's always nice to have some blood on the textures. So we can just reuse our preset. Whenever you're adding blood, try to not go for like very vibrant reds. This looks very fake. Try to go for like a very deep, dark red. The blood's a little bit fresh. You can go like a little bit more vibrant, but I would generally recommend not to go too vibrant on this. Again, if the blood is more fresh, if that's the idea of the storytelling, add a lot of roughness, like a lot of shine. If it's supposed to be like old blood that's been dried up, don't make it shiny. So this is the way that you can add like some more storytelling to the asset. In our case, let's go with some more dried up blood. Now you don't necessarily need like details on like small stuff like this, because it's gonna add more layers, making your scene more complex. But if you're doing something just for yourself, feel free to just have a lot of layers. But do keep in mind, maybe if you need to share this with a coworker or a client, it might be better to try to keep like simple stuff like this contained in just a few layers. But first, let's have some fun with it. Let's add a moist. And add a lot of contrast and up the tiling. So I'm going to call this blood. And let's just add a black mask. And for blood, I usually like to use the moisture mask. Very important for this, make sure you're using triplanar because it's like splattered on the asset. It shouldn't be like following your seams. So duplicate this and we're going to add another moisture. Let's adjust the tiling and the rotation and the balance. And let's put this one on multiply. The contrast a bit. And something like that. So the idea is that you should barely be able to see it at all. It just needs to be there for like subtle wear. Of course, if you want, you can always like have it be more visible if that's like the aim that you have. If you want like to tell that he's like right in the middle of a battle or a fight, then it would make more sense to have like a lot more blood shown. Also, if you want this to look nicer, it's always a good idea to go in and like kind of fix up the stuff by hand. Like you can say, okay, maybe I want a little bit over here. Let's start painting that in with a low flow and a low opacity. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, maybe we can add some dots around it. Looking nice. Maybe we can have some dots over here. But I think you get the idea. Like the more time you're gonna spend on this, the better it's gonna look like. But it's not always necessarily to like spend like hours and hours doing like a single layer. It all depends on the aim of your project and the time that you have or want to commit to it. Another common one that I always use is like some dust. Just go back to a preset. And actually for this, let's just not use a preset. Again, since this is like very subtle, we can also just choose to literally have a single fill layer, add the black mask, and we can call this dust. And then in this case, we can just go to smart mask, look for dust one. This one, let's just put that on there. When this happens, it means that your bakes are too compressed. To avoid this bake in 32 bits. Now let's just try to use another one. So maybe this one. Go ahead and adjust this a little bit. So the contrast. See it happening already here as well. So if you do have bakes that are like baked in low quality or have a lot of compression, you can get around with this by just adding a blur. But you would definitely get better results with better resolution bakes. Maybe something like this. Now this is very extreme. Keep in mind, whenever we do take the color and like we put the values more down, it's going to be less visible. But for like as a base, as a starting point, I like to have it very visible so I can see what I'm actually doing. So let's go ahead and add a fill. And let's start taking away a little bit. Take away, just put it on multiply. Mess with the balance. And something like that looks good. Again, since we have a lot of brown, I'll go for like a bluish dust. Can be a little bit more visible. You can add a levels and just push the whites up a bit. Let's also add some of those dust speckles again. The fill. We go to dirt. Put the balance down. Something like this. And then finally another one that I like commonly use is dirt. In this case it makes a little bit less sense, so I wouldn't really put too much dirt here because like the helmet. But if you have like a full character, like you can imagine that the character would have like a lot of dirt in this area, especially around the feet, and then just kind of dirt going up the legs. Some here at the hands where it's like touching stuff. Then maybe some splashes here. And then maybe a few speckles here and there on the top. So for now, let's actually not do that. Now we can just take the environmental wear. Let's copy that. Copy layers. Also, let's quickly turn it off and on. You'll see that it will make a nice subtle difference. But it does add a lot to the final look and believability of the textures. And also, like usually I would spend a little bit more time on this. The more time you spend on this, of course, the better it will look like. But I think for demonstration, this is sufficient. Because you get the idea. You can add as much like environmental wear that you can think of. It's all up to your imagination. Do try to make it make sense though. For example, if this was like a pilot that was like stuck in like a crash, like he's walking in a forest and it's like a rainy day, then maybe it will make a lot of sense to add like a lot of mud to the helmet. But maybe his story is he's just a pilot and he's in a jet, then it would make less sense. Maybe it's just a pilot helmet that's being kept in a museum, then it makes no sense to have mud on it. So just think about the story that you want to tell with the environmental wear that you put. Over here you can also see the effects instance. Over here it's just a single layer instead of the group. If you want to make adjustments, it needs to be done in the original one. So I'm just going to paste our environmental wear. Turn it off and on, see how I'm liking it. And then we can make adjustments to the mask over here if something is wrong. For this I'm pretty okay with how it looks. The only thing I don't like is the obvious symmetry in the blood. So I'm just going to go here really quickly in our paint. I'm going to paint away one of those. And again, just like the effects instance, you could like make an instance of the environmental wear, but I wouldn't recommend it because a lot of times you need to adjust the masks for the environmental wear on different texture sets. That's the reason why I'm going here. I'm actually copy pasting them instead of instancing them, which is a shame. It would be really nice if we could just like adjust the masks on the instance. Now finally, let's go to the mask and edit. See over here, the blood is like a lot in that front part, so we're just gonna go in again. And let's remove all that blood on the front, because I want it to be very nice and subtle. Maybe we can add a little bit back, like very little bit.